Hello, Brianna. We're going to take a look at your 5 characteristics posting, talk a little bit about what I'm observing, give you a little bit of feedback. So let's just jump right into it. Get to screen share over here. Kind of do some take a look at what we have. So I like to start by just doing an overview, look at the posting from, sort of a general point of view, see if you've got things organized well, all of the characteristics listed in a logical order, have them labeled in the way that we have been talking about, that type of thing. Get an idea of the general sort of sense, whether the images look overall maybe a little bit dark or a little bit light, that kind of thing. So as I'm looking at the images, clearly I think you probably also would agree, very easy to see. These are dark, and it's easy to correct. I think that's just some simple settings that we can take a look at on your camera. And make that kind of correction. But clearly these images are dark. What that means is they were underexposed. Not enough time was allowed for the light to pass through the lens to expose the material on the light sensitive chip on your camera, or not enough intensity was allowed. Either or, it was not enough. And so what happens is, because it's not enough light, the image goes dark. Now, if it was the other way around, where there was too much light, then what would end up happening is the image would be light, very bright, and we call that blown out. So you would see the highlights, there would be no detail, even the shadows would look super bright. But these are a bit dark. We'll address that moving forward. Some of your images, they turned out fine. I mean, direction position 9 looked like you hit the exposure there. Here now we have position 5 on the intensity. It looks like you may have found a correction on day 2 and day 3, that type of thing. Once I move into temperature, it looks like you made some corrections. A few of these, again, got a little bit dark on you. All of this is a learning process. We wouldn't be in a class if you were expected to just do things you already know how to do. So through the learning process, you'll get better at some of these things. That said, it looks like you have labeled everything correctly. You've organized this really well, so that's a very good job. Now let's just kind of take a look at some of your compositions. What I mean there is, let's take a look at the kind of arrangement that you're doing within the camera. So you're looking through the camera, you got the viewfinder, and you've got elements in front of you. How are you positioning those elements within that frame? Is it organized in some sort of way that creates a dynamic composition? In other words, are my eyes moving around the composition in a logical way, in a rhythmic way, in a way that makes sense? This isn't a composition class. This is about lighting. This is about cameras and things like that. But we do want you to use the tools and the principles and methodologies that you learn in your composition class. So anyway, let's take a look. We'll get my face out of the way here. So you are using the entire picture frame on this first image. This first image, when I say the entire picture frame, I mean from edge to edge. We have a little bit of a highlight over here that doesn't seem to be contributing to much of the composition, but it does seem like you are addressing some of the spaces here. Let's move to another image and take a look. I think I saw some. Here we are. This next image, you're activating the space much better. You're using the entire plane. You can see here, this shape is carving out one space. You're using the shadow back here very effectively to kind of interrupt this negative space. You've got a rhythm that's starting to happen here with light, dark, light, dark. That's all very good. When it comes to compositions, you're looking to activate the space in a way that moves the viewer's eye around the page. Now, of course, as I mentioned, that these get a little bit dark, but I can see some evidence where you're still using that rhythm. So that's a good note. Don't worry about too much about the dark. We're going to correct that. You can always resubmit. We'll have a grade for you. The grade will reflect, the craft which you had a little bit of trouble with, but don't freak out on that. You're gonna have plenty of opportunity to kind of correct that and resubmit it, and you'll bump up your grade with no problem. Okay. The goal here is to get you to do it correctly, not to penalize somebody for having a little bit of a misstep in terms of their exposures on their cameras for no other reason that this is just all new to them. So we'll get you straightened out. This composition here, we'll talk about this one. This one's quite good because what you're doing is you're taking two diagonals and you're juxtaposing them. When you have diagonals in a composition, you're creating a lot of energy, and so when you cross them like that, what you're doing is you are sort of using those energies to sort of move the eye around. If you had two diagonals kind of going in the same direction, it would just whip your eye right off the page. But what you're doing is you're crossing them, and it's kind of creating this rhythm where the eye sort of moves around the page a little bit more efficiently. So that's a good use of the page. I'm seeing some really good things other than what happened with some of these exposures. Here again, on this image, we have some good rhythm happening. Now intensity, that's about having the key light, the one key light, and then supplementing that key light with the fill light, which is simply to add a little bit more light at a lower percentage. The key light's always the brightest, but a little bit of other light, a secondary light at a lower percentage to fill in the shadow areas. You're doing that. By principle, you're doing that very well. Again, I'm happy to see what you're doing with your images. So that's a very good point on this. So you've done that with the intensity. You're exploring color very efficiently here. We've got some deep blues going on with this image. You're doing from foreground to background. That's kind of interesting. You've shifted color from the very warm to the very cold. You're even exploring a little bit of this deep blue going on here. You didn't quite do any mixed lighting. That would have been an option where you had maybe a key light happening, like the key light is warm and the fill light is blue, that kind of thing. That's always an interesting combination where you kind of take two different colors, like two different temperatures of light, and mix them together. That's an interesting combination to experiment as well. Now contrast, that's about modulating the variation between the brights and the darks. Remember we used a reflecting card, and what we're doing there is not adding light, but we're redirecting light back into the scene. If you remember the demo, we had the key light and then I had the card, and that took some of the light that was lost by the key light. Remember the key light kind of shone off to the side there, and it was hitting the wall way across the room. Well, we grabbed that reflector and grabbed a hold of that light and moved it right back into it. It's making the most use of the light that we have. So what we're looking for is evidence of that, where you're grabbing some of the light from the one source that you have and redirecting it back into the scene. Doesn't seem like it's happening too much here. It may be happening, but you're not really using it to full effect just yet. But I am seeing it sort of starting to work for you. In shots like this. I can see evidence of it right in here. This little brightness right into this image right here, that doesn't happen unless you have a reflector. So that's good. You sort of started off where it seemed like maybe you weren't getting the reflector in there very well, and then maybe as you progress, you were able to figure out just how to redirect the light back in there. The last characteristic that we worked with was hardness. And hardness has everything to do with the shadows. When we're talking about hardness, we're talking about the hardness of the shadows. And that deals with the edges. So if the edge has a crisp line to the edge of the shadow, that's considered hard. And if it has a soft edge to it, it's considered soft. It's pretty logical. We control that primarily by using a diffusion on our lights. So again, the experiment was actually very simple in technique, but then we left the door open for you to explore it in a lot of different ways. What I'm looking for is your exploration of that technique as we move through the series. Are you exploring this concept of modulating the shadow edges from hard to soft? So when I look at an image like this, what I'm looking at is, okay, so we have a hard key light. Obviously, the light is coming from the left side. Whoops. Let me kind of move myself back over to that image. My mouse is going crazy this morning here, so let's move it back here. The key light is obviously coming from the left side here. I think it's still the left if you're looking at it on the video. And then you have over here, you may have had a fill light. It looks like you have a little bit of a fill light going on right on the edge here. That fill light may be diffused right now, but it seems like it might be really a soft light and maybe not really contributing a whole lot. I can tell that the main key light is not diffused because of the shadows. You see the shadows right here? That indicates to me right away, this is a hard light. You don't have a filter on it. Now that's fine because part of the experiment was to work with a key light with no diffusion on it and then a fill light with no diffusion. But you can see how you're able to look at a photograph and in a way you can kind of break it down and figure out just how the photographer might have done it. Which is kind of cool because you can see a lighting scenario, and if you know the principles of lighting, you're able to, in a lot of ways, you're able to maybe like break it down and duplicate the look. Now this looks like you've diffused the fill light here because we can see that the edges on the shadow here are feathered or soft. It's hitting this edge of the bottle, and as it comes around here, you can see that it's soft. Again, we can tell, even though I don't see the light, we can tell that you're using a soft light. So these principles, these 5 characteristics of light, when we use them in combination, so by the time we got to the hardness, you're pretty much using all of the characteristics of light in one way or another. When you're using all of them, it's sort of like like a multiple instrument band. They're all working together. Sometimes one is taking over and sometimes the others are in the background, but they're all sort of working together to create the lighting solution. Every lighting challenge is a puzzle for you to solve. And we use these 5 characteristics to sort of solve the problem of lighting each time we have a lighting problem. So even when we're moving forward with some of these other projects like the aesthetics and control, and eventually we're going to be outside and using the sun and stuff like that, you're still going to be considering the 5 characteristics of light and how they can be incorporated into your lighting solution. So we'll work on that exposure. We'll get that corrected, and we'll get your photographs sort of worked out there, and we'll see you in the studio. All right. See you later.